This is TWiT.
Well, let's talk about privacy, because the big story of the week, and I would love to get your take on this, the big hack from Bloomberg Business Week came out on Thursday, claiming that China put a tiny chip on motherboards coming from Supermicro that are used everywhere. We use them because they were Amazon discovered them
right?
before they bought the Elemental. They wanted to check security
according to Bloomberg.
Again, everything we say will be according to Bloomberg Business Week. These elementals are everywhere, from the Mormon Church to the Department of Defense.
I own 20 of them.
Yeah. Do you own any of the old Supermicro based? Because all of ours are. We traded that in for Amazon. I want you to
some older ones.
Bring in one and we'll take it apart. We'll see if we can find that chip. Serious? Well, okay. So I'll complete the story. The next day, Amazon, Apple, the Chinese government all say BS. It didn't happen. Apple was very aggressive in its denial.
Apple, who barely ever answers press inquiries and answers them in the tersest way possible when it does answer them, put out pages of retort.
Yeah, and here's the letter they wrote to the members of Congress who inquired about it, the Energy Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. We were struck by the fact that the gravity and magnitude of the claims seemed to be undermined by their uncertainty around key details. Nevertheless, we worked tirelessly to ascertain whether these claims were true, or failing that, if anything even like them was true. In the end, our internal investigations directly contradict every consequential assertion made in the article, some of which we note were based on a single anonymous source, although we should point out the article itself had 17 anonymous sources. Well, that doesn't surprise me, because if you knew this and you talked to Bloomberg Business Week, you're not going to give me your name, or you'd be in a small room in the Pentagon today.
This letter was signed by the head of InfoSec at Apple, which is unusual too.
Yeah, I mean So one thing some people claimed is, well, maybe the Apple PR department didn't know, but this guy would for sure know. Apple's never found malicious chips.
And they had Bruce Sewell.
Right.
But here's the thing: is that for a publicly traded company to be so assertive puts themselves at incredible risk of lawsuits and SEC violations and everything else. For them to come out, and a publicly traded company to come out and say this, and have all of them say it, is
Amazon
you're going to say, like, they're risking a lot to say that.
Look at the Department of Homeland Security's Saturday announcement. We currently have no reason to doubt statements from companies that have denied this.
Throw that one away.
Well, I don't throw it away, because to me, but that's them saying, well, okay, but we're not gonna. That's hedging.
If there were that many Supermicro things that were sent in, because this has to be part of a fab. Wait.
I agree. We will know sooner or later, because you and others have these elemental motherboards.
And I think that. But the thing is, if I was Bloomberg, I would have found that first.
Yeah, they didn't find one.
They didn't find one. Not a single. We're talking about thousands of thousands of Supermicros that are floating around here with this infamous chip that. But they didn't find. You've got to explain. I would not have made that. I would not have created this. I would not have written this, or at least not published it, until I had a board.
But 17 sources is a lot of sources
when they're anonymous.
And this is Bloomberg Business Week is not. Fly-by-night operation.
I know, but
they've been working on this for a year.
And without someone coming on the record, I have this issue and no board.
No one, first of all, no one is going to go on the record. You'd be in jail. I swear to God, no one's going to go on the record on this. No one is going to go on the record. What may happen, and what I hope will happen, and I expect will happen, is somebody who has one of these motherboards finds this chip. And by the way, this isn't
not that chip. That's the wrong chip.
This isn't the chip. That's another statement, by the way, by the one person who was quoted by name in it. A security researcher said, it doesn't smell right, because I talked to Jordan Robertson, one of the journalists who wrote this story, and a lot of the stuff that I told him was last year was regurgitated word for word. He said, this is a security expert named Joe Fitzpatrick said, I would never do it this way, frankly. A hardware implant's too easy to discover. It's much simpler just to do, firmware modifications and so forth.
He also said that he doesn't work for a nation state, and it would be highly unlikely a nation state would implement something that's the exact same way that he sort of off the cuff explained to a reporter how it might work.
Well, I don't find that convincing either. So there remains, the question remains, is Bloomberg lying, Alex? Is that what you're saying? Or is it sloppy reporting?
I think it's sloppy reporting. I think that they're gonna. This is gonna damage their brand, and I think people are gonna lose their jobs. You know, like it is not gonna because if it was true, they should have waited until they had evidence. You know, they should have waited until they had a board. If there's thousands of these boards around, I mean, if one of these boards exists, I bought Supermicros in the time frame that they're talking.
This is 2015. So do you have some Supermicro based elementals from 2014, 2015?
Absolutely.
Well, I think you owe us.
I'll bring one in.
I'll send it to iFixit.
I'll send an elemental.
iFixit is pretty good at identifying chips.
ChipWorks with their scanners.
ChipWorks. Actually, it's ChipWorks that often does the work.
I actually have
the
an
hardware
elemental
for
that I'm not very happy
iFixit.
with. So it's old. It's seen a lot of miles. We could send one to iFixit. If you give me somewhere to go, I'll send it out and they can look at it and see if they
can. You imagine if this is the Red Team 3 episode of the newsroom just played out?
It's hard to imagine the scenario here. Is possible that the U.S. government played Bloomberg? Because, of course, the U.S. government, which I might point out, is doing exactly this thing to others.
Everybody's doing it to everybody. But installing it onto the board is.
Well, you know where this. Okay, so I talked to somebody who knows a little bit about this. Where this sometimes, most often happens, is not in the Supermicro factory, but after it's shipped, and the box goes through a depot in Bethesda. Somebody opens the box, modifies the motherboard, and sends it on. That we know that happens. That actually has happened. We know that happens. It happens from us. It happens from China. It happens in many countries. Israel. We know that happens. Israel. We know that happens. So that's not a surprise. I mean, I guess the hot potato here is, did Supermicro do this themselves?
Yeah, the thing is that it's generally just not something you want to go back to the factory where it's going to, back to the assembler where it's going to go through a whole system of checks and everything else before it goes out. You want to do it after that when it's on the way, so you know where it's going, and who you want to spy on, because sending it out to too many places makes it easier to like putting it in. The part that seems very improbable is putting it into the manufacturing process. Just seems like if they put it into the manufacturing process, that is a lot of computers out there. I mean, Elemental didn't sell 10 of them. They sold thousands of them.
That you then disagree with. Not that it doesn't happen all the time, but that Supermicro got caught doing it. By the way, they're based in San Jose. They're a U.S. company, although run by a Chinese national.
For me, the thing is the denials. I mean, like Apple and Amazon could conceivably have just said, look, we're looking into this. We don't know what's happened. There's no customer data that's been taken. We're going to report back to you. And it would have been fine. Like, it would have been annoying, but it would have been fine. We would have gotten over it and onto the next controversy by Tuesday. But it's the denials now. It's like, it's never the cover up. It's never the crime. It's always the cover up. To have Bloomberg double down on their sources and to have Apple and Amazon go I've never, ever seen these companies go so wholeheartedly on these denials. Any party in this could have de-escalated early on and saved a ton of face. Now there is so much at stake that you have to believe that there were a couple of people at Amazon and Apple that know this, that didn't even tell anybody who they would have to tell during the normal course of business at their company, including the IT and InfoSec chains and the legal chains. And it's just them sitting there talking to national security, and this one reporter happened to find out, or someone managed to bamboozle a reporter or steer them in the wrong way to the extent that Bloomberg was willing to publish this, and neither makes sense.
It'd have to be 17 someone's, though.
But he might have 17 things saying oftentimes you get you can tell the quality of a journalist not by the sources they get, but by the narrative they extract from them. And seldom do reporters state facts. More often than not, reporters and their editors construct elaborate narratives around facts, and that's when they tend to make mistakes. It's not just reporting the things that they hear; it's trying to turn that into a story. And they've done something. More often than not, we've seen that, especially with Apple. We've seen that with things like iPhone 10 sales, where you get a little bit of data and you make this whole iPhone 10 is not selling narrative turns out to be completely wrong. That is always a danger in journalism, and that's where there's potential exposure here.